My name's Tom Webb. I'm the Environmental Initiatives Program Manager Senior for the LFUCG Division of Environmental Policy. And today I've got Bob Money with me with AMEC and Tom Reed with AMEC. They're actually our brownfield consultants for the work we're doing under our Brownfield grant. Well, basically in a nutshell, a brownfield it sounds scary, but it's actually just an underutilized property. It's usually a commercial property that's had many or several uses in its lifetime, but there's either a perception or a reality of contamination being left behind from one of the previous uses. So you're usually looking at historical properties. It can be as small as a corner service station. It can be as large as a manufacturing facility, and everything in between. So it doesn't have to be a large property. It's just basically is not being utilized to its fullest potential. And you get in historic parts of town in particular, you'll see a lot of buildings that aren't being used any longer, and they have a lot of potential, but sometimes the fear of contamination prevents them from being redeveloped, and that's what the Brownfields program is designed to address. Well, basically, when we wrote our grant application, we received a $200,000 petroleum grant from the federal EPA, their Brownfields program, and also a $200,000 hazardous substance grant, and that allows us to assess properties for petroleum and hazardous substances. It also allows us to develop cleanup plans for properties, and limited circumstances to actually do things like underground storage tank removal. So it's a really good grant to have. When we wrote our grant, we focused largely, the number one area we focused on was this district. It's a community-wide grant, but we knew we had a lot of opportunities within this area, so we spent a lot of time in the grant application talking about this specific area in the Distillery District and the Town Branch Trail, and how we can basically use these funds to help these properties redeveloped and to serve as a catalyst for the entire Distillery District. So that's really one of the main, I guess, gist of this grant is to do that, to help with that process.
We're assisting the city with the Brownfield grant. We're providing some environmental consulting to help the voluntary use by property owners to utilize the EPA funds to take care of some of the assessment work that typically is required by lenders associated with developments.
Basically, under the grants, we're able to use the money to conduct several types of assessments, environmental assessments. A phase one, which is really an overview assessment of a property to determine its past uses in addition to its current use, and then a phase two, which is actually going on site and collecting environmental samples. We're also able to use the money for things like asbestos assessments, hazardous materials assessments, lead paint assessments, in addition to those phase one and phase two activities.
That really the Brownfield program, the way it's set up, the two main thrusts of the EPA, the federal program, is to deal with potential public health issues that environmental contamination can cause, and also to spur economic development. So that's really what we're after, is to spur economic development, return these properties to a productive use. It increases your employment picture, it improves your employment picture. It improves your tax rolls. You've got a lot of the existing infrastructure here already, so it's actually a fairly cheap way to develop. You know, the zoning issues, or the zoning is appropriate for the use already, so it has a lot of advantages just to be able to return a property to reuse. And of course, it saves money. For the property owner, it's a great deal because this grant does not cost the property owner any money whatsoever. So if you're a property owner and you want to participate and you had a potential property, all you'd have to do is contact me. I'd put you in touch with these guys, and they would determine if the property was eligible, and we would go from there. But basically, it's a great deal. It helps. A lot of these owners find out they don't even have contamination on their property. You'd be surprised how many times that actually happens, which is a great deal, because then the properties, it becomes immediately marketable and more valuable just from that perspective. And it also provides protections for buyers, because you're doing due diligence before you buy a property, basically. So it helps demonstrate that there's not contamination on the property, so it becomes a much more valuable property just from that standpoint alone. But it's all geared to basically return not just the building, but the entire surrounding area, to a more productive environment.
In order for property to take advantage of the grant funds, there is a process we have to go through that determines the eligibility of the property. Once that's determined and it's been approved by EPA, we can get to work right away. And typically, it's a 3 to 6 week process to get a phase one completed and reviewed, and then if it's necessary to go to the next phase, phase 2, there's a work plan that's put together, it's reviewed, and then that process can get started. Usually takes about 60 days or so to get that process underway and moving along.
Well, it's basically a 4-year grant, so we have 4 years to spend the money, and then we hope to use this to build upon the program. There's also, you can apply for EPA cleanup funds. We've had one entity already in Fayette County that successfully obtained cleanup funds. You can also try to obtain revolving loan grant funds, where you can have a revolving loan for cleanup of properties. So this is just hopefully the first step in a process to actually allow us to provide more resources and to, I guess, impact more properties. One of the main things we want to do really is within Fayette County, we're so concerned, and rightly so, about our green space and our farmland and our protections that we have for those. Everybody's aware of those. But this allows us to promote infill and redevelopment from a planning perspective, and it allows us to develop within the urban service boundary where you already have the infrastructure in place, and the economics are better, your return on investment's better, and you're not using green space to develop, and that's a win-win for everybody.